time for Here's the Deal, and joining us in the studio, Dara Parker, Lee Checkstad, and from our downtown studio, Shachi Curl. Hello, Shachi.
Hello, Jill.
Sorry, I was spinning along quickly there, and Sachi popped out earlier. I do apologize.
It happens all the time.
Let's start with you. Sleep Country harassment. The case was actually tossed out. A woman who worked there said people were saying not very nice things, sexually harassing things. The tribunal found that, well, she participated. It makes it a little tough. What do you think?
I think it does make it a little bit tough. Without having read the entirety of the decision, it's a little bit hard to comment, but I think you can take away from this that it will, I think, have something of a chilling effect on employees who would otherwise come forward. And of course, in the back of their heads, they're probably now thinking, well, did I ever say anything? Did I ever participate? Is that going to simply create a toxic environment if I do complain and then that complaint is dismissed? I think for the most part, employees who are dealing with this kind of thing probably just move on. They find other jobs or they put up with it. And both of those things are unfortunate. I think the big loser here is not necessarily the tribunal or the employee, but Sleep Country that was out there on one hand defending themselves, saying, well, it was a sexualized environment. And then their CEO is out there today saying, oh, no, it's fine. We have a really respectful work environment. So not a good day for Sleep Country.
Yeah, I will point out that Dara Parker and Lee can't really hear Shachi. Oh, my goodness, Shachi, you're going to shoot me by the end of the night. You can't hear her, so that makes it difficult to have a conversation. She was talking about a sexualized environment at Sleep Country. I don't mean to be trite, but I mean, it's a room full of mattresses.
And, you know, I can hear some things she's saying. I think there's a couple of things that need to be pointed out here. The woman did participate, and at no point did she ever say to someone when these conversations weren't going on, you know what, sometimes I find this a little bit offensive.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sure, but that's putting the onus on the victim. And I don't know enough about this specific case, but I know that sexual banter in a workplace is really common. And there was a study cited in 2009 that said, despite that commonality, 90% of women are not comfortable with that. And I myself have found myself in situations flirting when maybe it just became the norm in the office, but not particularly because I wanted to engage. So I'm not justifying what she did, but I understand that this is normalized behavior that I don't think should be acceptable.
Well, and unfortunately, it's group behavior, right? So if the group is doing it, you want to be part of the group, you end up falling into it and participating. It happens in newsrooms. It happens all over the place. You know, you mentioned studies. One showed that it's sometimes good for bonding.
I feel like this plays an advantage to men over women. Mm-hmm. I definitely think men hold the majority of power, not exclusively, but in this kind of highly sexualized environment. And I speak from my own personal experience.
And it's funny, you know, when you said that, it made me realize if it's a group full of women, we typically don't have those conversations. That's not what we joke about. Right, Shachi?
Well, we joke about all kinds of things, Jill, and sometimes it can be a little bit saucy, but I think it really does come down to, are people creating a work environment that is respectful? If an employee is actually stepping up and saying, you know what, guys, I know we all want to have fun and have some banter, but I don't feel comfortable with this. If they're going to the employer or to the manager on the floor and saying the same thing, then the employer has an onus to really clean up that environment, or at least find a sweet spot, if you will, and I don't mean that in around ensuring a respectful work environment for everybody.
Yeah, let's move on to the Sandy Hook 911 tapes. We saw some of the parents of the kids who were killed who were absolutely vehemently opposed to these 911 tapes being released. Dara, is there value in hearing the panicked voices of people in that school as that gunman was shooting?
Well, I think you've set me up here, Jill, because my answer is yes. But I empathize deeply with the parents. And of course, they don't want to be re-traumatized by listening to this. But I think the bigger issue at play is this is a public institution, and so it's a matter of public records. And I don't know if it's applicable in this particular instance, but you're setting a precedent around giving access to information that could potentially, if it had gone awry, if there had been a big mistake on the part of the police, 911 operators, the police, the emergency responders, then we'd want to look at that and make recommendations to improve it in the future.
Mm-hmm. Lee, does this sort of
I don't want to listen to them. I did not listen to them. They were everywhere today, and I chose not to. I have no interest. I get your point about the public access to information, but maybe it's something that if you can have public access to it, but you need to go to the 911 office or where the public records are released, and you need to listen to it there, because it is traumatizing for everyone who heard it and didn't want to hear it today. If they heard a clip of it on the radio, I don't think it's doing anything useful, but I do understand that it does need to part
But
of the
that's a
culture.
media responsibility, isn't it?
It is, you know what, and you're right, it is everywhere today. My producers and I chose not to run them. You know, we don't need to. If you've not heard it already, you can probably go find it online, and a lot of people have heard it. Shachi, a former reporter, is this got value?
It does have value, Jill, because I'm 100% with Dara on this around the importance of the public record and the importance of transparency and also the importance of history. You had that conversation with your producers, with your news directors today. You made a call around the news value of it. That's fine. But we release things and we put things out for the case of history and for the case of the public record more than for the edification of newsrooms or for people who...
Right, and I agree with you totally. However, this is the kind of thing that
are upsetting.
becomes salacious and is sent around, and everybody just uses it over and over and over, and you know ramps it up. I mean, is that really in the public's best interest?
Well, don't ramp it up then, or don't consume it. I mean, we have choices. I mean, the ultimate choice is if you don't like it, turn it off. Don't read it. Don't look at it. In the interim, there are things to be learned from this. I do empathize with the families, and perhaps it was too soon. Maybe it was something that should have been, released.
Well, it's close to the anniversary as well.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. But I mean, ultimately, should we not ever look at footage again from the attacks on September 11th? Should we never ever talk about the atrocities of war that are happening or other bad things? Should we never ever talk about the Picton trial again? All of these things are horrendously upsetting. It doesn't mean that
We shouldn't talk about them. No, I think part of the problem though is that particularly for the United States and gun violence, we'd like to see some resolution, and we can hear all these 911 calls till the cows come home, and people are still killed by people with guns. Let's move on. We've only got a couple minutes left. Vancouver rental limits. This was sort of all over social media earlier this week. The city of Vancouver offers up great incentives for developers to build, I don't want to call it low-income housing, but apartments that will be rented affordably.
Housing.
But it looks like what was considered affordable was a 356 square foot apartment for $1,200 a month. Dara?
True. So I have two comments. The first is that we absolutely need purpose-built rental in Vancouver because that hasn't happened for 30 years. And so I applaud Vancouver City Council for looking at creative ways to use their limited levers to make that happen. But looking at the prices that came out today, they talked about affordable housing being targeted towards median household incomes between $58,000 and $82,000. And the average Vancouver household income is apparently $67,000, so that's in the lower range of that. But I live in the West End in Vancouver. 81% of my neighborhood rents, and the average median income household, I'm not even making sense because I'm upset about this.
Yeah.
The average household income is more like $34,000. So how's that going to impact these high-density rental neighborhoods? Completely unaffordable.
Lee?
I think that the numbers there, they are unaffordable, but they're more affordable than what you can rent for right now. If you go on Craigslist and look at what 1 and 2 bedrooms are renting for, these are hundreds of dollars less. So I think it's at least a good start.
Yeah, and there's a very limited occupancy rate. I mean, it's not like there's a whole lot of apartments going wanting out there. Shachi, will give you last word on this. Your thoughts on these low rent housing?
So to start, full disclosure, the city of Vancouver is a client of mine. But that said, I am a little bit with Dara on this one in that this is a far less doorknob idea than banning doorknobs. The thing is that affordable means different things to different people. And The Economist said that Vancouver, the city of Vancouver, was the most expensive city in which to live in North America this year. So affordable means different things. And rent control from that perspective, or minimum rent, means different things. Look, ultimately, if you're making that median income and you can afford to be paying $1,200 a month, you can look at doing that in the city of Vancouver with these purpose-built units for $1,200 and 360 square feet, or you can do it in Burnaby, Surrey, or New West and probably get a little bit more. But what it enables is choice. And I think people, if given the choice not to have to commute, some people will choose that. And at least these folks are not at the mercy of landlords or the uber rich. And what it does is it keeps certain sections of downtown Vancouver really from becoming playgrounds for either offshore owners or people who are very wealthy and are really just only interested in luxury housing. We need to ensure that cities are livable.
Right. I'm not sure that 357 square feet is livable, but that's not up for debate tonight. All right, Shachi Kurl, Dara Parker, and Lee Checkstead. Thanks, ladies.
Thanks.
Thank you.
What would you do if your budget was cut by more than 90%? Hard to survive, really, but that's exactly what New West Secondary School is trying to do on $65,000 for the entire year. That's up next.